Right now, deep inside a state-of-the-art automotive factory down in Bavaria, an entire multi-million-dollar assembly line might just grind to a complete halt today.
Oh yeah, just totally shut down.
Right. Hundreds of workers just standing around, robotic arms powered down, production targets totally missed.
Yeah.
And the reason isn't, a local strike or a power outage.
No, it's much further away than that.
Exactly. It's because one single commercial vessel carrying a very specific shipment of microchips had to suddenly change its route thousands of miles away off the coast of Yemen.
It is wild how connected it all is.
It really is. It is incredibly easy to forget how the physical world actually works. Like you sit on your couch, you tap a button on your phone, and a couple days later, a cardboard box just magically appears on your doorstep.
Yeah, we take it completely for granted.
We do. But behind that single tap is this entirely invisible world.
Yeah.
Roughly 90% of all international trade travels by water. It is the literal lifeblood of the global economy.
And yet, unless you live right next to a massive seaport, you probably never even see it. It really is the ultimate out-of-sight, out-of-mind industry.
Yeah, exactly.
But that invisibility, it masks an incredible systemic vulnerability. We look at ships as just delivery vehicles, but they are carrying the raw materials, the raw energy, the critical industrial components that keep entire nations functioning.
Right, yeah.
Without them, the modern world simply stops.
Which brings us to the mission of today's deep dive. We are looking at one specific nation to really understand this global fragility, and that is Germany.
Europe's economic powerhouse.
Exactly, one of the top exporters on the
Yeah.
planet. And right now, they are navigating a literal perfect storm. We're looking at this crazy collision of geopolitical conflicts, deep economic dependencies, and this massive, urgent push to completely modernize and green their maritime fleet.
It is a lot to tackle all at once.
It really is.
Yeah.
And to figure out how they are handling this, we've been poring over a really fascinating stack of intelligence. We're pulling from defense analyses from the German Institute for International and Security Affairs, combining that with maritime trade logs, regional business reports out of Hamburg, a geopolitical study from France, and Germany's own comprehensive national port strategy.
It is a massive stack of data.
It is. Okay, let's unpack this. Just to ground us, how heavily does the German economy actually lean on the ocean?
Well, the scale is quite staggering when you look at the raw numbers. Germany boasts a merchant fleet of 1,764 ships.
Wow.
Yeah, that ranks them 7th globally. And their gross tonnage, which is essentially a measurement of the total internal volume of those ships, like their total carrying capacity, it sits at 47.4 million.
47.4 million.
Right. To visualize that, you are talking about a fleet capable of moving tens of thousands of Eiffel Towers worth of physical goods at any given moment.
That is just insane to picture.
It is, and because of that, 60% of Germany's total imports and 62% of its exports rely entirely on maritime transport.
So their entire industrial model is fundamentally tethered to the water. But, looking at the trade logs, they aren't exactly ruling the waves uncontested anymore. The international competition looks pretty fierce right now.
Oh, it is, especially in container shipping. And container shipping is the absolute backbone of consumer goods and industrial parts.
Right, the boxes we see on trucks.
Exactly. In this specific sector, Germany is actually slipping down the ranks. They currently have about 30.2 million gross tons dedicated to just container shipping.
Which sounds like a lot, but
it puts them behind Switzerland, actually.
right, landlocked Switzerland?
Yeah, which is driven heavily by the Mediterranean Shipping Company, this massive conglomerate. They have 34.7 million gross tons. And Germany is also trailing China, which sits at 31 million gross tons and is expanding its fleet at just an astonishing rate.
Wow. And this fierce competition is happening on a map that is becoming increasingly dangerous. Like, we started by talking about that factory in Bavaria shutting down. Let's talk about the mechanism behind that.
Right, the logistics of it.
Yeah, because modern manufacturing relies on something called just-in-time logistics. Companies don't keep massive warehouses full of spare parts anymore because, well, storing inventory is expensive.
Very expensive.
Instead, they calculate exactly when a part will arrive on a ship, and it goes straight from the port to the assembly line. It is a highly tuned, hyper-efficient machine. But when you rely on just-in-time logistics, any delay in the ocean instantly breaks the factory on land.
Right, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, you start to see why global choke points are so terrifying for an export-driven economy. Take the Red Sea, for example.
Yeah, that's been all over the news.
Exactly. In 2023, almost 10% of all German trade passed through that specific body of water. That is 136 billion euros worth of goods.
136 billion.
Oh. But because of continuous attacks by Houthi rebels in Yemen on commercial vessels, massive shipping giants, including Germany's own Hapag-Lloyd, have been forced to completely avoid the Suez Canal.
Which means they have to sail all the way south, right? Like around the Cape of Good Hope at the bottom of Africa.
Yep, completely detouring the entire continent.
That adds weeks to the journey. It burns millions of dollars in extra fuel. But it's not just the Red Sea that acts as a bottleneck, right? I mean, the global map is just littered with these fragile transit points.
Precisely. I mean, German foreign trade relies heavily on the Strait of Malacca in Southeast Asia. That handles nearly 9% of their trade.
Okay.
And the Taiwan Strait, handling over 7%. And while places like the Panama Canal and the Strait of Hormuz account for less than 1% each for Germany specifically, they remain critical global choke points.
Because of the knock-on effects.
Exactly. If the Strait of Hormuz closes, global oil prices skyrocket. That instantly inflates the cost of operating that German fleet, regardless of where those ships are actually sailing.
That makes sense.
And for critical raw materials like the preliminary chemical products and rare earth metals that German industry desperately needs, their dependency on these specific sea routes often exceeds 90%.
So let's talk about the companies actually absorbing these shocks.
Right.
If you are a huge multinational conglomerate, you can probably take a hit on your quarterly margins to reroute your massive ships around Africa.
Yeah, weather the storm. Yeah.
Right. But our sources note that 80% of German shipping firms are actually small and medium enterprises. These are SMEs. A lot of them operate fewer than 10 ships.
Yeah, they're very small operations.
So for a family-owned shipping business, absorbing the cost of an extra 3 weeks of fuel, plus navigating geopolitical curveballs, like, the U.S. floating 25% protectionist tariffs on European goods, how do they survive that kind of financial bleeding?
Honestly, many of them are struggling too. A massive conglomerate has the cash reserves and logistical flexibility to absorb those shocks. They negotiate better insurance rates, they spread the losses. A small SME burning through its cash reserve just to physically move a ship around a conflict zone faces a literal existential threat. And if those smaller firms go under, Germany loses a massive portion of its sovereign logistics capability, which just further consolidates power into the hands of foreign conglomerates.
Man. So the global transit routes are a minefield of delays and soaring costs. But, they don't even have to look at the other side of the world to find threats. Let's bring this closer to home, right into their own backyard.
The Baltic Sea.
Yes, the Baltic Sea. The defense analyses we reviewed paint a picture of the Baltic that looks vastly different today than it did even a decade ago.
It is a totally transformed geopolitical space. In Germany, they use the term Zeitenwende, which basically means a profound historical turning point. And this was sparked by the war in Ukraine.
Right.
During the Cold War, the Baltic was a highly contested, divided sea. But recently, with Sweden and Finland officially joining NATO, the geographic reality has shifted entirely.
Right, because looking at the map, the Baltic Sea is now practically surrounded by NATO allies. You've got Sweden, Finland, Poland, the Baltics, Germany, Denmark. It looks like a NATO lake on paper.
That's exactly what people are calling it.
Which means Russia's primary access points, specifically Kaliningrad and St. Petersburg, are suddenly boxed in. And just to contextualize how vital this is, St. Petersburg handled over 300 million tons of maritime cargo annually before the war. Now, navigating those waters is a strategic nightmare for Russia.
Which is precisely why the Baltic has become a hotspot for hybrid warfare. Russia still needs access to those waters to project power and, honestly, to maintain its own economy.
Sure.
Because they are geographically cornered by NATO allies, they have turned to continuous low-level provocation. It's not open military combat, but it is deeply, deeply disruptive.
We've seen the sabotage of the Nord Stream pipelines, obviously. But the defense reports highlight a lot of other bizarre activity, like unidentified drones flying over Swedish nuclear power plants and German military training areas.
Yeah, and Russian landing ships moving aggressively. Even the live firing of Kaliber cruise missiles as just this blatant show of force.
It's intense.
It is. The challenge here is the nature of the maritime domain itself. The ocean offers what military strategists call strategic depth.
What does that mean in practice?
Well, below the water surface, you have this vast, dark, three-dimensional space that is notoriously difficult to monitor. Protecting a fiber optic data cable or a gas pipeline that stretches across hundreds of miles of open deep sea is a logistical nightmare.
Oh, I bet.
A submarine or an underwater drone can operate with near impunity if you don't have constant overlapping surveillance.
But wait, let me push back on that a second.
Yeah.
If the Baltic is now functionally a NATO lake, surrounded by some of the most advanced militaries in the world, why is that surveillance so fragmented? Like, why is the infrastructure still sitting there so vulnerable?
That is the million-dollar question. Because political alliances on paper don't automatically translate to seamless military coordination in the water. Right now, NATO is actually dealing with an internal dispute over who actually takes the lead in defending the Baltic.
Really?
Yeah. The UK's Joint Expeditionary Force is claiming a leadership role on the northern flank. Meanwhile, Germany, despite this whole Zeitenwende awakening, has been hesitating to establish a proposed regional maritime headquarters in Rostock.
That seems like a pretty big oversight.
And it's a hardware problem, too. You can't monitor that strategic depth if you don't have the equipment. Germany recently decided to acquire only 5 P-8A Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft, scaling back from the initially planned 8.
Only 5.
Yeah, these aircraft are basically the ultimate eyes in the sky for hunting submarines and monitoring surface fleets. Cutting back on that capability severely limits their situational awareness right when the threat is peaking.
Wow.
Which is why the defense analyses stress that the most urgent need isn't actually just buying more planes or ships, it's data integration.
Connecting what they already have.
Exactly. NATO allies need a common, highly secure network to seamlessly share classified situation reports in real time. If a Swedish sonar buoy picks up an anomaly, the German headquarters needs to see it instantly. Technical interoperability is literally the only way you actually secure a body of water that large.
Man. So on one hand, you have Germany trying to coordinate the military defense of its waters from foreign adversaries. But if we pivot to the geopolitical studies from France that we looked at, we uncover a totally different kind of vulnerability.
Yeah, a much quieter one.
Right. Because it's one thing to defend your waters from foreign submarines. But what happens when a foreign power has legally purchased the docks those submarines are meant to protect?
Shareholders instead of submarine.
Exactly. We have to talk about China's port dominance.
It really is a masterclass in global infrastructure strategy. I mean, 7 of the world's top 10 ports are Chinese, with Shanghai being the largest.
That's huge.
But their overseas expansion is what has truly reshaped global trade. Through various contracts, terminal concessions, and equity stakes, Chinese companies and Hong Kong-based entities now hold investments in 96 overseas ports worldwide.
96 ports. And that brings the issue right to Germany's shores, specifically to the port of Hamburg. This is Europe's 3rd largest container port, an absolute behemoth of trade. And recently, CUSCO, which is a massive Chinese state-owned shipping and logistics company, acquired a 24.9% stake in the company that operates the Tollerer terminal in Hamburg.
Which sparked an absolute political firestorm in Berlin.
Oh, totally. And it extends beyond the coast, too. Duisburg, which sits on the Rhine River, is Europe's largest inland port and a crucial logistics hub for the entire continent.
Very crucial.
COSCO showed high interest in their new gateway terminal, and concurrently, the Chinese tech giant Huawei has been involved in developing a smart city digital network for Duisburg.
And this is the critical part.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I want to break down why this specific combination, owning the physical terminal and operating the digital network, is causing such alarm among security analysts. The concept of a modern smart port isn't just, guys in hard hats moving boxes around.
No, it's highly advanced.
There's a highly automated 5G connected ecosystem. Cranes are operated remotely, autonomous vehicles move containers, and algorithms dictate exactly where every single item goes. Allowing a foreign rival to own stakes in this infrastructure and operate its digital networks is like, it's like hiring someone to install a state-of-the-art security system in your house, but letting them keep the master key and a daily log of every time you leave.
Exactly. This raises an important question about data sovereignty. If a third-party nation has access to the logistics data of a critical European hub, they possess incredible intelligence.
They see everything.
They know exactly what raw materials are moving, where the industrial components are going, how fast the supply chain is operating, and where the exact bottlenecks are. In an era of economic competition, that data is just as valuable as military intelligence.
But, the tension here is that Germany actually needs this relationship.
Yeah.
right? Like, we can't ignore the economics of this.
Mm.
Hamburg is deeply tied to China. 1 in every 3 containers passing through that port either comes from
Right.
or is going to China.
And massive volume.
It's huge. Hamburg is absolutely essential for exporting Airbus planes, which is a multi-billion euro industry. And in 2023, Germany's trade balance with China rebounded to 210 billion euros. So if ports like Hamburg and Duisburg need this massive volume of business just to survive the fierce competition from neighboring megaports like Rotterdam and Antwerp,
Yeah.
isn't taking Chinese investment just, well, a necessary reality of global trade? Isn't it just smart business?
Well, before diving into that, I want to be explicitly clear for our listeners. We are absolutely not taking a political stance here, left-wing or right-wing. We are strictly reporting what these defense and economic analyses are highlighting to convey the ideas in the source material.
Right, exactly. We're just looking at what the data says.
Exactly. And the analyses present this as the ultimate economic security dilemma. On one side, these ports are the engines of wealth for the German economy. They have to remain globally competitive, and right now, China is the dominant player in maritime trade volume.
So alienating them could mean economic isolation.
Exactly. But on the other side, security experts view these investments as potential Trojan horses. So the challenge for Europe is finding a way to balance open, profitable trade with de-risking. How do you take their business without handing over the keys to your critical infrastructure?
And Germany has tried to legislate their way through this tension. They implemented something called the LKSG, the Supply Chain Due Diligence Act. It's designed to enforce ethical standards and create transparency, essentially forcing companies to thoroughly audit their entire supply chains for human rights violations and environmental risks.
Which is a noble goal.
Right. The goal is to build resilience and ethical accountability.
But in practice, it introduces a whole new layer of friction. Remember those SMEs we talked about?
Family-owned shipping firms with like 5 or 10 vessels.
Yes, exactly. Complying with the LKSG requires massive administrative oversight. You have to trace and verify the ethical compliance of every supplier, every vendor, every port of call.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. For a small business already bleeding cash from rerouting around the Red Sea, the added compliance costs of these massive auditing requirements are incredibly burdensome.
So if we step back and look at the board, you've got Houthi missiles forcing ships around Africa, Russian hybrid warfare threatening the underwater infrastructure of the Baltic Sea, complex foreign ownership stakes in critical terminals, and heavy domestic auditing regulations weighing down small businesses.
It's a lot.
It sounds completely overwhelming. But Germany is actively fighting back to secure its sovereignty, aren't they?
They are. The government recognizes that the maritime sector is just too critical to fail. So they are implementing a comprehensive national ports strategy. This is a massive, coordinated effort to rebuild their maritime competitiveness from the ground up.
Like trying to rebuild the ship while sailing through a hurricane.
Exactly. And to fuel this rebuild, they've authorized a 400 million euro injection through the Climate and Transformation Fund, or KTF.
Okay.
This money is laser-focused on modernization and the green transition, and this is where the logistics get really fascinating. The strategy mandates that German ports transform into carbon management centers.
Carbon management centers.
Right. By 2045, they need to be the central hubs for importing green hydrogen and its chemical derivatives like ammonia and methanol.
Let's explore the mechanics of that transition, because moving away from fossil fuels isn't just about swapping out gas pumps. When Germany decoupled from Russian pipeline gas following the invasion of Ukraine, they created a massive energy void.
A huge gap, yeah.
And to fill that void with green hydrogen, you need entirely new infrastructure. You can't just pump ammonia through old oil pipes safely.
No, definitely not. Ports have to build specialized, highly pressurized storage tanks, new safety protocols for volatile chemicals, and new onshore power plants.
Right, so that ships can plug into the electrical grid while docked instead of burning diesel engines in the harbor.
Exactly.
What's amazing to me is how the motivation for this has shifted. Like 5 years ago, the green transition was primarily discussed through the lens of climate change and environmental responsibility.
Yeah.
Now, reading through the defense and geopolitical sources, the tone has completely changed.
What's fascinating here is that green energy has become synonymous with national security.
Wow.
Energy sovereignty is the ultimate prize now. If you can produce your own clean energy, or at least diversify your import hubs so you are bringing in green hydrogen from multiple democratic partners worldwide, you eliminate the risk of being held hostage by a single petrostate.
The green transition is now a vital defensive strategy.
Absolutely.
And alongside the physical rebuild is a massive digital overhaul. The Hamburg business reports detail the push to build dedicated 5G campus networks directly into the ports. They are pushing for deep automation of terminal operations. But because of the vulnerabilities we discussed earlier, they're pairing this with incredibly robust cybersecurity frameworks.
It's just so critical.
Right. They recognize that a hacker infiltrating a smart port's logistics algorithm can shut down trade just as effectively as a physical blockade in the Red Sea.
And implementing all of this, the hydrogen infrastructure, the 5G networks, the cybersecurity, it requires a highly specialized workforce. And interestingly, the sources highlight a surprising silver lining here.
Oh, yeah.
Germany is famously dealing with a severe demographic shift and an aging population, which usually means labor shortages. But in 2024, they actually saw a 14% rise in maritime training contracts.
I saw that. They had nearly 500 new trainees sign up for roles at sea, and over 200 taking on shore-based technical roles. It seems to be driven by a younger generation that is highly motivated by the climate crisis.
Yeah, they want to make a difference.
They actually want to be on the front lines of engineering a climate-neutral global shipping industry. The government is leaning into this hard, heavily pushing STEM training, so science, technology, engineering, and math, to ensure these new workers have the specific skills to handle complex hydrogen logistics and automated digital networks.
It is a brilliant way to harness that demographic enthusiasm. But there is a significant hurdle threatening all of this modernization, and it comes down to fragmented bureaucracy.
Right, because this is happening within the European Union. The maritime reports point out that while the German industry is trying to sprint forward, they keep tripping over red tape. You have double reporting requirements where companies have to file the exact same emissions data to both national and EU regulators, but in totally different formats.
And beyond the paperwork, there is a lack of cohesion. If Hamburg implements strict, expensive climate regulations and heavy cybersecurity mandates, but a port just across the border in another European country doesn't, well, shipping companies will just reroute their cargo to the cheaper, less regulated port.
Which totally undermines the whole thing.
Exactly. This internal European competition undermines the entire effort. The consensus across the geopolitical and economic analyses is that a united European port strategy is the only path forward.
Right.
European ports cannot afford to compete against each other while simultaneously trying to fend off third-party control and navigate global security crises. They have to operate as a unified, resilient bloc.
So, bringing this all together, we started today by talking of the invisible world of maritime trade. But when you look closely at the mechanisms, you realize that a simple container of consumer goods isn't just a box on a boat.
Yeah, at all.
When that container has to navigate around Houthi missile strikes in the Red Sea, when it docks at a partially Chinese-owned 5G-enabled terminal in Hamburg, and when it's finally unloaded by autonomous cranes powered by imported green hydrogen, I mean, that single container perfectly encapsulates every major global shift defining our era.
It truly is the physical front line of globalization, geopolitics, and climate change, all converging simultaneously on the docks.
So what does this all mean? Well, the next time you tap that buy button and wait for your package, take a second to consider the immense, highly contested, and incredibly fragile geopolitical web that product had to navigate just to reach your doorstep. The logistics keeping our world running are anything but magic. They are a constant, high-stakes balancing act.
And as we look to the future, here is a final thought to ponder. We are watching the world frantically race to shift from fossil fuels to green energy. But what happens when climate-friendly shipping technology and hydrogen infrastructure become the new geopolitical weapons?
Oh, wow.
If a nation controls the digital software running the automated smart ports, and they control the green fuel supply chains of tomorrow, do they become the ultimate maritime superpower? They might not even need to control physical choke points like the Red Sea or the Baltic Sea because they will control the very operating system of global trade itself.
That is a thought that will definitely stay with me. It's a whole new ocean out there. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.